Hello and welcome to our webinar. I'm Una Shortall and I'm the Deputy Secretary General of the Council of European Energy Regulators. Very warm welcome to everybody joining in from around the world. Today's our first webinar on social media. It's part of a series of webinars run by the International Confederation of Energy Regulators under our Women in Energy initiative. Today's webinar is a first on many counts. It's our first social media webinar, and we're going to talk today about how to build and enhance your personal brand. And we hope to have a follow-up social media webinar later on before the end of the year, talking about social media from the organization's point of view. It's also a first in terms of it's the first time we've opened up the webinars to both men and women within our community of regulators. And finally, it's a first because for the first time we have two external speakers. Normally we have regulators speaking, so today we bring you two social media professionals, and I'll introduce you to those in a moment. So we're very delighted to have them today so we can seek their advice on how to make the most of social media. So very warm welcome to Kerry Evenson from C+C.com, and she has a very sparky title. She has the title of Director of Digital Lead and Creative Herder. And C+C.com specializes in social marketing and PR with a particular focus on sustainability and projects that make the world into a better place. So Kerry joins us from Seattle on the west coast of America. Good morning, Kerry. We also have with us today Trevor Glendinning, and he is the president of Sun Social SEO, and they're an online marketing company that specializes in web design and social media. Welcome, Trevor, from Florida.
Good morning, thank you.
First, a word on how this webinar will work today. As you listen to our two speakers, you have an opportunity to send in your questions, and we'll be very happy to take those. And then after the first presentation, we'll address as many questions as possible in the final 25 or 30 minutes of the webinar. The webinar is also audio recorded, and so it'll be available to you later in case you have to drop out for a while and can't stay for the full webinar. The presentations will also be available online afterwards. So what are you going to learn about today? Social media as a sphere is absolutely huge. We have Facebook and Instagram and Tumblr and LinkedIn. So, and many of us use social media to varying degrees. So if it's fairly uncharted waters for you, you're going to learn a lot today. You're going to learn which platforms to use, and I'm talking about in a professional use. You'll learn what's the differences between the different platforms and which ones to really invest time in. Step by step, we'll take you through those different platforms, and we'll show you good examples of how to build your own brand profile online. We'll also give you tips on how to create great content, and of course we'll explain the rules of engagement to you. So if you're already an experienced user of social media, you're also going to learn a lot. You learn how to boost your personal branding and how to leverage that across the different social media channels, and we'll explain new features, what's the latest, issues like how to use live web streaming and pinned tweets, and there's much, much more. So I hope you're going to enjoy today's webinar. But why are we talking about social media at all? I spoke at the beginning of the webinar about this being part of our Women in Energy initiative. Women in Energy is about helping women on their career paths. And we all know that networking is very important to grow your career. And networking is essentially about making contacts and then nurturing those contacts into building relationships. And more, social media has been becoming a very important way of networking with people around the globe. So it's important that you know how to use social media effectively. It's particularly important for the busy professional who doesn't always find the time to go to those networking events, and also for people who are a little bit introverted and who find it difficult when they're at those networking events to take those initial steps and make contact with somebody new. So social media is very simply about improving your standing, your connection, and hopefully your career chances too. It's an absolutely terrific way to follow experts in the field, for you to share content yourself and to become a commentator, a contributor, and expert yourselves. I've lost some light here, so we have to move around. Sorry about that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your personal brand. And just like companies, people have brands too, and it's important that we as individuals work on our own personal brand, and that you're able to articulate who you are and how do you want to be described on social media. So whether it's you want to be described as an economist, as a communications expert, as a golfer, that's very important. But first, a few facts and figures. I recently came across the Pew Research Center latest statistics on social media and mobile messaging apps. And by most mobile messaging apps, I mean apps such as WhatsApp and Snapchat. And they show that 36% of smartphone users are using messaging apps. What makes them popular is that they're free, and when you're connected to the Wi-Fi, you're not using up your SMS or other data. What are the most social networks out there? We're going to learn lots from Trevor and Kerry today. Again, just one interesting statistic, 72% of online adults, and I'm talking about adults here, are Facebook users. In terms of their engagement, they're very active. 70% say they log on daily, and many more log on more than once daily. Who's growing in terms of social media platforms? Well, that's interesting too. Facebook statistics have remained fairly static this past few years, but the new kids on the block are the people like Instagram, whose statistics, whose growth have doubled since 2012. And that's very interesting because we're talking about adult online users here, particularly when you generally associate, say, Instagram with the younger audience who very much like the casual tone and also, you know, the highly visual element of it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Kerry, and she's going to show us and teach us a little about social media guidelines. First of all, Kerry, over to you.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we do.
All right, great. Thanks everyone for joining today. So Una went through a little bit about who is using social media, what are the most popular apps, and really the truth is everyone is on social media, whether it's not something that's going away, it's something that is here to stay, and so whether you use it a little bit or a lot in your personal or professional life, I think it's a great idea to know the basics of what is out there, what is available to you, and how you might use these platforms. So go ahead, Trevor, and move ahead. All right, so we have a few guidelines for social media success, and just about 4 of them. So we'll get a little bit general, and then Trevor and I will go into specifics about each of the primary platforms and some tips for you to get started. So the first guiding principle is authenticity. And if you could forward the slide, Trevor, that would be great. All right. So when we talk about authenticity, this is how you want to present yourself online. What type of person do you want to appear to be online to your colleagues, to your family, to your friends? We all go through life, our day-to-day life, whether at work or at home, with our personalities and the way that we present ourselves to the world. So taking a little bit of time to think about how you want to present yourself out on social media in a professional branding context is a good idea. You don't need to have a personal social media plan or policy or anything complicated like that, but just think about, do you want to come across, as Una said, as an expert in your field? Some people stay away from all controversy online. They just post positive things and new things. Some people enjoy getting into debates online about hot issues in their industry. So think about the types of engagements that you want to have online and go from there. Next slide. The next thing we want to think about when we are online is commitment. So I think a lot of people think you have to commit hours and hours every week to social media to get something out of it, to really make the most impact. And that's not really true. It's okay to start small. Pick 1 or 2 platforms that you decide that you want to start with, and get to know them, get comfortable with them. And then if you want to branch out and expand, that's fine too. But I think you can do a lot in just a couple hours a week. Maybe take 20 minutes each day on the professional side. I know a lot of us spend more than that personally on Facebook and other platforms sometimes. But from a professional side, think about at least once a week looking at your LinkedIn profile if you have one, and checking that and updating something, sharing things. On Facebook, making sure that your personal information is up to date, that your photo is reflective of what you want to put out there, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that later. The third principle that we talk about in social media success is content. And content is, you may have heard in the US there's a saying, we say content is king. It's the most important piece of your presence online. It's what are you putting out there? What are you creating? How are you creating it? And how are you distributing it? So there's a lot to think about here, but is it a blog that you want to start and get your thoughts down online about top industry issues? Do you want to take photos? Do you want to share graphics and images, maybe infographics? Do you want to take video? We'll talk a little bit more about YouTube. Or do you want to start small and and find things online that are of interest to you, things like articles, videos, things like that, and share them out to your followers. So retweeting, sharing, reposting. So not a lot of original content, but you can always post things and add a little note from your perspective if that feels comfortable to you. So we talk about content needing to be compelling. So thinking about who is your audience, who is on the other side of that Facebook page or that tweet that you want to reach, and what do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel, and do you want them to take any action? Do you want them to do anything? And that's a principle of marketing and communications that I use a lot with my clients, thinking about who your audience is and what they would like to hear, what they would like to see and learn, and try to be respectful of that. The final principle we talk about is engagement, and I touched on this a little bit before, but no one likes to speak to an empty room. Everyone likes to have feedback and engagement when they're engaging in a conversation, and it's the same online. So if you want to have people engaging with you, sharing your content, retweeting, reposting, commenting, liking, think about how you can be a good online citizen as well. So think about ways that you can do the same to others, because social media really is a two-way street. It's not just putting your content out there and hoping for the best. If you engage with people online, I think Twitter is a really good example of this, where conversations happen and there's a lot of back and forth. If you put in the time and effort to engage and appreciate and converse with others online, they will do the same for you. So those are just some things on a top level to think about when you're getting into social media, and now we'll get into some more specific information about the different platforms, and I will turn that over to Trevor. Thank you. And Una, did you have some questions actually after this section that you wanted to talk about before Trevor gets started?
Well, I think we'll just dwell on some of those key messages there for a moment. It's a very strong message there from Kerry that it's about two-way communication, not just one. So we'll just go straight on with Trevor, and he's going to bring us through the different platforms. Over to you, Trevor.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me all right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Trevor.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Okay, well, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you are in the world. You may think you know who you are, but the internet may disagree. You see, you're a brand, and it doesn't matter really if you want to be or not, but in this digital age, we have all become brands unto ourselves. So personal branding then becomes this process of managing your digital presence and optimizing the way that you appear to others. This is one of the few opportunities that you have, and it's really unprecedented, to create on your own for free, as long as you have access to the internet, a wide digital footprint of who you are and what you care about, and share with a worldwide audience in real time. So social media then becomes, of course, one of the most powerful ways of doing that. What's a quick way to check on your personal brand? Well, do a Google search of yourself. As you can see on the screen, this is a quick Google search. This is the front page results from my name. And as you can see, my business comes up and my Facebook and some photos, but then on a professional level, you see LinkedIn and another website called About Me, which is an aggregator that provides links to all of your digital identities, in Twitter and YouTube. And it even goes back into my past life when I used to be a professional musician. You can find songs that I used to play with my band. If your first page results don't look like this, then getting involved in social media and taking your personal brand seriously is going to be a good idea for your professional prospects, because there are a lot of benefits to personal branding. And there are a few things that will help us to get there. One, find your specific niche, what it is, the industry or market that you're a part of. Go out and build a consistent profile on all of the social networks. As Carrie mentioned earlier, share daily, but also seek out groups and chat boards and post your opinions on subjects that are important to you. And try to stay on top of the feedback that people are giving. There are wonderful ways to get email notifications on all of the major social media sites so you never miss a comment or a share or a notification. It's also helpful to turn people off if you don't like the kinds of content that you're getting in your news stream. So what are the benefits of doing all of this work on personal branding? Well, new clients. It's a great way to build business and generate revenue for your business or for the company you work for. It allows you to build stronger partners by seeking out people whose values and skill sets you admire and want to connect with. As your digital footprint increases, it will provide opportunities for you to take leadership roles in the groups and organizations that you're a part of, thereby giving you greater recognition in your market. And that comes back again to what Carrie started talking about, which is authenticity. And that's related to authority and credibility. Do people really believe who you say you are, and is there the evidence out there to demonstrate that you are an authority in your field? And this finally affects your perceived value. In a media-driven world, your digital presence, your personal brand, your perceived value becomes real value. And so the main way that we go about demonstrating or building a body of work is through the blog. And there are many types of blog. Twitter, for example, or Facebook is a microblog, a truncated mini post. It's basically any system where you can post text or image or video content and in a chronological order. And there are several platforms out there today. One of the most popular in the world is WordPress. WordPress is a blog, but it's also a content management system which allows you to make very, very robust websites for free, as long as you're willing to put in the time and effort. And you can go to wordpress.org to sign up for free hosting, and they'll host the website for free. So it's an easy way to begin the process of creating content. Blogger, Tumblr, and the other platforms are also free. Blogger is connected, to the Google platform, and so you can connect it right to your Google Plus profile. And Tumblr is much more social, but if you're not really sure which blogging platform to use, take time to Google each of the 4 of these. You can always find an introductory video on YouTube to give you much more information about how to use these platforms personally or for business, and it's a great way to get started. But if you're not blogging, go ahead and make the first step and sign up on one of these platforms and just start sharing your expertise and your body of work. So I'd like to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, because we're talking about personal branding, but we're really talking about personal branding for business. We're here for work, and we're trying to connect with not only potential colleagues and other people who share our interests and our skills, but we're looking for customers, we're looking for information. And LinkedIn has really been the place where business gets done. It avoids the social pitfalls of Facebook and Twitter and some of the Instagram. This is professional, and most workplaces allow participation in LinkedIn. To start with, what makes a great profile is a great photo. This is all visual, so hire the best photographer you can afford, get the best lights, and really show the world who you are as it's fitting to the culture you're a part of. I also recommend going out and hiring a professional resume writer. A LinkedIn profile is big. It should encompass the entire history, your work history, and it allows you to embed media files and links to the websites that you've been part of and to projects and people you've been connected with. But there are keywords that are more effective than others, and hiring a professional resume writer who has a background in keyword research and analysis in the LinkedIn search engine itself will be best equipped really to help you to document your work history and to tell a compelling story that's not only going to be appealing to other LinkedIn users but to the search engine itself, which brings you to the top of the search results, which allows you to distribute your content more widely and connect with other people that, again, share your values and can help you to grow professionally. And you have to consider that part of the new internet economy is a giver's gain philosophy, that by creating and by adding to conversations and by creating content, we actually serve the community that we're part of digitally. And so if you understand the concept of karma, the more we give, the more we get, and I believe that it is tightly wound to, again, authority and authenticity. I wanted to talk briefly about the Google environment as well. Most people today, or many people, have a Google Gmail address or at least use Google to search. Google is the largest search engine on the planet. And the second one is YouTube. Carrie's going to talk more about YouTube later. But YouTube is the second largest search engine. Now, the Google environment allows you to control lots of products and services that are free to use. Some are paid, but Google My Business is a powerful way to get your location if you're a brick and mortar organization or your brand spread out to the world. Google Maps is one of the premier location-based map services, and their Google Docs platform allows people to use Microsoft Word-like documents and spreadsheets and slideshow presentations for free and collaborate in real time. So even though some of the tools out there seem to be much more social in the sense where we're very publicly sharing our work, some of these tools are social in the sense that they allow us to connect and collaborate. So I would, if you're not using the Google suite of tools, explore more the Maps and the Google My Business and the Google Docs environment. You may find that it helps you to create increased productivity in your workplace. And I will hand it back to Carrie.
Okay, Trevor, thanks for that. Trevor's a big fan of Google Docs. In fact, this presentation was jointly prepared by Kerry and Trevor using Google Docs. Kerry, over to you. I have some questions coming in. I don't know whether you'd like to take some now, or we'll move over. We'll move on.
I see the one that came in about using separate social media platforms for personal and professional use, which is very interesting. And I think we can touch on that now before I get into detail, if that works for you. I think, so the question is it correct to use separate social media platforms for personal and professional use, i.e. Facebook strictly for personal use with strict privacy settings and Twitter solely for professional use? Is that an effective way of building our personal brand? And I think that's fine. I don't think, there are some people, I count myself in this category, for whom the line between professional and personal kind of blurs a little bit, and that's a decision that you make, and you can decide to blur that line and blend that line, or you can decide to separate the two. Knowing, like Trevor said, you know, nothing is ever really secret online, so always being careful for what you're posting on each platform. But I think it's completely fine if you think, no, Facebook is only for my family, is only for personal use. I'm going to keep my privacy settings very private and only post to a certain number of people. You can do that. I think that's okay. You are missing out on some of the opportunities that Facebook may provide to you. A lot of people don't know that Facebook is a huge search engine. The Facebook search bar is it's getting more and more possible to get all kinds of information and reach people. And I actually don't think they've really figured out how to best optimize that yet, and they're always working on it. But once they do, it's going to be huge. And so you do miss out on a little bit of that personal branding when you eliminate one channel. But I think it's fine if you do want to start just with, you know, one, maybe Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, and keep Facebook, for example, just for personal use. A lot of people do that, and I think it's fine, just recognizing that there are some opportunities that you miss by doing that. All right.
Kerry, just to jump in there, your comments on the rules of the game for mixing or not mixing, shall I say, the professional and the personal is stimulating some interesting comments here, and one of them is, so does that mean that it's okay to ignore a request from your boss or a work colleague? How do you deal with that one, Kerry? And Trevor, I'd like your views on that one too.
Yeah, I'll start on that one. That is tough. If you are really going to keep it completely separate, then you have to be very consistent, I think. So not accepting any professional invitations and being clear about why you do that. But you can't just accept one and then maybe your boss tries to friend you and then you say no. That gets into tricky territory, which is tough. And that's where Facebook privacy settings are actually very helpful. And I'll go into a little bit of detail on this. But you can accept a friend request from someone and then make sure they never see anything you ever post again, or you never see anything they post again. So you're effectively invisible to them, and you can go into your privacy settings and set that there. So if you think that from a professional standpoint you really should accept that request, there are ways to secure your content and very, very closely control who sees what that you are posting on a post-by-post basis. So there are ways of getting around that. But yes, it's very tricky. I tend to be an open book. So what you see is what you get. My grandmother sees what my boss sees, and I hope for the best and try to interact online accordingly. But there are ways of controlling that if that doesn't make you feel comfortable.
If I can chime in some cases your company may actually have a social media policy, so you may want to check into the rules related to how you may use social media. I personally feel that all social media is all business. It's no longer personal. None of this information ever goes away. And if somebody wants to look at who you are to judge your character, that is going to be the body of work. So as Carrie was leading to, there are different ways to protect your personal versus private interactions. Facebook will allow you to create a business page for your professional profile, and you can insist that fans or followers, because I do work with some celebrities, they can steer people to that page where they can follow your interests, but not necessarily be directly engaged with the page that you use to share with your family and friends. On LinkedIn, I hope I'm not being a LinkedIn snob, but I insist that folks use a picture and are a real person. And if you have both of those things, then I'll follow you on LinkedIn and engage with you there.
Okay, I'm just going to have to take this question, Carrie, because it's a follow-up before you move on, and because you give some very good advice there on accepting but adjusting your settings so they see nothing. And the question that came in is, does that type of customization require constant management?
Not necessarily. With the caveat that Facebook is always changing up their privacy settings, so it's a good idea to keep track of updates and things like that. There's always new things that they're coming up with. But I don't think that, so once you put someone on that list, they stay on that list, or once you mark someone as restricted, they stay on that list until you change it. So I think keeping track roughly in your head of who is where makes sense, but if you bring up your list, you can see who is on those lists. You can very easily modify it, but just keeping in mind that that's something that you are doing, and making a note maybe to check in every couple of weeks or every month on, what is new? Has Facebook changed the way that I can add people or remove people to lists? Is there a new function that I didn't even know about? That might help me do this a little bit more. And at the end of the presentation, we have a few links to resources and blogs that help people keep track of the latest and the latest news and features. So that might be something to do. But normally, once you put someone on the list, once you do that, it stays there until you change it. Okay. All right. Shall I keep going? All right. So here are just a few tips for Facebook success. And I apologize for the fuzzy screenshots. It was the best I could get with the big screen resolution. But a lot of people don't know that you can get a vanity URL on Facebook, and all that means is you have a link to your Facebook page. There is a URL out there that leads to your Facebook page. And just like I believe on LinkedIn you can do this as well, you can, or if you had a blog, you can customize that URL so it says your name at the end. So mine is, for example, facebook.com/Carrie Evenson. So you need to just go into your settings and edit your username. And if you have trouble Googling it, it's very easy. Facebook vanity URL, and you'll get to the link to do that. But it's very easy. It says, here's your current URL. What would you like it to say? And then you can change that. I do believe that there's a limit on how many times you can change it, so be careful not to put something silly or something that you might want to change a few times later. So think of what that one thing is that you want to be in your URL, and then you can post that in your email signature. You can put it in all of your communications so people know where to go to find you on Facebook. All right. The next thing to do is connect with others on Facebook using groups. So groups on Facebook are a great way to engage with people who have similar interests, either on a personal or a professional side of things. So I personally am in, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 groups from professional issues like energy efficiency and marketing and public relations, but also on the personal side. My neighborhood has a group. There are interests, gardeners in my neighborhood have a group. And it allows you to post messages just to people who are in that group. And you can have groups that are private and restricted, and where you have to approve someone getting into the group, or you can have public groups where anyone can join, but the messages still just go to the people who are in that group. And it's a great way of engaging with people. You post to the group page, you can go to the group page and make a post, and people can engage with you just like on your Facebook feed, your personal Facebook feed. So you can post video, you can post links and photos. A lot of people in neighborhoods do buying and selling groups, so it's almost like an online yard sale or eBay or something like that, where people have things to sell or give away, and people can engage that way. So I think from a professional standpoint, it's a great idea. You can have people, the women in energy. It would be great, Una. A recommendation would be to create a group for that group within your larger organization, where you can discuss things that are unique to your to the issues that you face, and engage with people and comment. And you set admins for that group, just like you would for a business page. All right, let's move on. So we don't have a ton of time. Number 3, I talked about this a little bit, is you can target your posts on Facebook with lists. So you can decide on a post-by-post basis who gets to see your status update and your post. So on the screen here, you can see a little bit of mine here. There's a lot of things to choose from. I can make it public. I can make it just go to my friends. I can make it just for me. Or there's lists that I can say, I would like just these people I've put in a list to see this post. The middle graphic here is the option to restrict people, and this is all in the settings, account settings of your Facebook account. And if you have trouble finding anything in your Facebook settings, if you Google what you're looking for, so Googling restricting someone on Facebook, it will always take you to a link that will help you do that. Sometimes it can be confusing to navigate the settings on Facebook. So you can set people who are restricted, who don't see any of your content, and then you can create new lists of people. So maybe you want to create a list of people who are in your organization, that you only want them to see content related to your profession and your organization. So you can very easily target who sees what type of content. You can create a list of relatives and family and friends who see pictures of your kids or your pets. So that's a great way of targeting content on Facebook and keeping everything from being public and everyone seeing it. The fourth piece is choosing your profile picture wisely. As Trevor has said many times, a professional photo on Facebook, if you are going to be using it for professional purposes, is a good idea. It doesn't have to be this stuffy headshot, but I think no one needs to see your university party days and that type of thing. You can set those photos as restricted on Facebook and don't make them your profile picture. All right, and the last bit here for Facebook. Trevor, if you want to move there we go. Facebook Notes is something that is coming back. It was pretty popular a few years ago, and this is Facebook's answer to the blog. It was a way when Facebook had a very small character limit for status updates, a way for people to post longer content and link people to that. And since then, Facebook has expanded the character count for status updates, so you can post a lot in your feed. But they've also brought back this notes function, which is very easy to get to from your profile page, and it allows you now in a redesigned format to almost make it look like a nice blog or article. So here's a sample here of the new format on the left, which has a great profile photo. The text is formatted nicely. It has a date stamp, so you can see when things were written. And then to the right, you can see an example of the old version, which was very simple, straightforward, and a little bit boring. But Facebook Notes are good for potentially putting an extended bio that you can't put in your Facebook profile. If you wanted to write a little bit more about what you do professionally, you can link to other content. You can make a link to your website. You can link to another blog that you have. You can repost things that you post on LinkedIn and elsewhere online. And so it's just another place to put your content, and it is searchable on Facebook, so it increases your searchability and is a lot more user-friendly than it used to be. All right. Next, there's just a couple tips. I talked about cross-promoting your content from LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., and then filling in your professional and personal information in that bio and that profile section on your front page is important. So moving on to Twitter, just a few tips. I think Twitter is great for professional use. I think you can come into it and out of it. It's something that you really get out what you put into it. So there's a few tips to get started on Twitter that I think will be helpful for people to know. And we'll wait for this to go. Great. So just as in Facebook, they have lists. In Twitter, you also have lists. So this is a really great way to focus what you're seeing on Twitter. You can take a person, take a Twitter profile, and add it to any number of lists that you create in your Twitter account. So that allows you to follow conversations by subject matter, by type of user. You may want to create a list just for reporters or media sources in your field, so you see news. You may want to create a list just for your friends and family, so you see things that they are posting. You could create a list for, different content pieces. I have lists for creative advertising ideas, and so I put a lot of creative people in that list so I can see what they're posting. So you can look at those lists at any time and see what is being posted with that subject matter, so you're not just trying to look at your full feed and being overwhelmed, because I get overwhelmed when I look at my feed and it's hard to pick out things that are most relevant to me. Hashtags are a great tool to also organize conversations on Twitter. And you just go up into the Twitter search bar at the top of your page, and if you put that hash sign in front of whatever keyword, it sorts by subject matter according to that keyword. And so this is a way for people to focus conversations. A lot of times this works very well for events and conferences that you might go to. So if you go to a conference, most conferences these days have a hashtag, and it's a way for all of the conversations about that event and that conference to go into one place. So if you're following that, you can see all the conversations. So you can post about what you're seeing, maybe great quotes from the speaker you're listening to, and everyone else can also see that as well. And then also things of interest. If you really like to see kittens, if you do hashtag kittens, you will see all the posts related to that. Twitter chats are another way that people use hashtags online, and I think this is a great way, as Una said, for introverts or people who are a little bit more shy to engage on Twitter. So a lot of times organizations will have Twitter chats or Twitter parties at a set time and date. A lot of times it will be monthly or weekly. One of my clients is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the Energy Star program. We try to do a Twitter chat every few months when there's a new campaign starting or a different season starting, and we invite everyone to join that chat, and everyone uses the hashtag, and it's just a focused conversation for about an hour about one subject matter, and you're engaging with other people. It's a great way to find people to follow, and a great way to get new followers yourself. The next tip we have is direct messaging. So this is a way to have private conversations in Twitter with one or more of your followers. So if you go up to the top of your menu on Twitter, there's a Messages tab, and you can select from your followers. It's very simple, and identify who you want to have a private conversation with on Twitter. This can get tricky. I think we've all seen headlines for when celebrities have thought they were having private conversations on Twitter, and really it was public. So just making sure that that direct conversation, you do the message through this interface is a good way of ensuring that it is private. But that's also a way of engaging with people on Twitter in a private way. All right, we are running out of time, so quickly I will go through some of these more visual mediums, and then we can have more questions at the end. YouTube, as Trevor said, is a huge, huge search engine and content engine online, and it is all video based. So there's a huge opportunity professionally on YouTube to position yourself as an expert. It's a great way to instantly relate to people and have people relate to you, and creating your page, branding it with your information, using a good title, tagging it with subject matter that you are an expert in is important. And all of this is actually pretty straightforward on YouTube. It's easy to do. So it's easy to set up a YouTube page, but to actually create great content on YouTube is a little tougher. It's a little more complex. You need to have great video. You need to not be afraid of the camera. You need to be engaging. You don't necessarily have to have fancy equipment, but the old cell phone camera video is just creepy, and no one wants to watch that. So great lighting, great content. Decide exactly what you want to talk about, and there's a lot of examples online. So if you just search what you're interested in on YouTube, there will be channels for things you would not believe. And if you feel like there's a place for you on YouTube, it's easy to get started. And then that makes it very easy to cross-promote your YouTube and video content elsewhere. You can link it on your blog. You can put your YouTube channel at the bottom of your email signature. It's a great way to get content out there and rank on search as well. And then these last two here, excuse me, Pinterest and Instagram. Una talked about these as being extremely fast-growing platforms, and they are. I would not recommend starting here with your personal brand. I think there are ways of optimizing LinkedIn, Twitter, even Facebook without going crazy with these two. But the great thing about Pinterest and Instagram is that they're so visual, and people really respond to visuals online. And on Pinterest, there are ways you can have your personal boards and things of interest to you personally, and you can also create a board for professional links and images and content, and that's very easy to do. So it's not a difficult thing to do, but the payoff professionally for using Pinterest, unless you are an artist or other creative professional, is less instant. And then on Instagram, the same thing. What you can do on Instagram is create a couple of different profiles. So you could create an Instagram profile that is just professional content. If you do a lot of traveling, if you go to different events and go out in the field, there could be a place for you on Instagram for people to follow your adventures and your travels. So think about what might work for you, but you don't need to keep your personal and professional in the same account there. All right.
So finally, we wanted to mention that it's a lot to take in. We understand that. But if you focus on the biggest ones first and create a consistent and compelling profile on the top 4 social media platforms, which essentially are the Facebook, Google environment, Twitter, and LinkedIn, you can use a tool like Hootsuite that allows you to connect each one of your separate profiles to it, and then you can post to all of them at once or schedule posts for the future. Now, it's true that each and every social profile has a slightly different culture and a different methodology to optimize posts, but there's some crossover, and a tool like Hootsuite will save you a lot of time.
I agree.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Just a few questions coming in there. One in particular, somebody says their kid has put a movie on YouTube a year ago without their permission, and is it easy to take it off? How do you remove the video?
Well, I can start.
Yeah,
go ahead. You need to have the password and access to the account, and then it is very easy to remove that content from YouTube. Trevor, did you have any?
If you don't have the username and password of the account and it's not against their terms of service, it may be difficult. So you might want to, how old is the child? Is he or she a minor? And then you can report the content to Google and the profile.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a few more questions coming in. I'm just going to fire them at you. Twitter, as we know, has a fairly short lifespan because it's very much real time. What is the lifespan of a typical tweet now? Is it a day? Is it hours? Is it minutes? What is it?
Well, the tweet will live on for a while, but in terms of people's feeds and how long it will show up for them, it is probably just a few minutes these days. And if you have a lot of people that you follow, there's a lot of content coming in, and that's where things like lists can be very helpful, where you're focusing the content and you're seeing just tweets about a certain subject matter, and so it moves a little bit more slowly, so those types of tweets will show up better. But in terms of what you are putting out there, you can't really control how people have their lists set up. So understanding that if you put something out there, if someone doesn't have you on the list or if they're not paying attention, yeah, it could be a half an hour or down to a few minutes that your tweet shows up in their feed. So that could be an argument for posting a little bit more often, or posting a couple times on the same subject at different times of day to catch different people. because it's not like Facebook where if you did that, people will get really annoyed. On Twitter, if they didn't see it the first time, it's gone. So it's like they're seeing it for the first time if you post it again. But again, you don't want to post, more than a couple of times a day. That's hard to maintain just on your side, and there may be folks who get tired of seeing that.
Okay, I've two different questions, but they're quite related, and it's about negative information. Trevor, I'll direct this one to you. How do you handle negative information that comes up on page 1 of your Google search? And similarly, what do you do if somebody retweets something but in a very negative way? How do you deal with that?
Well, I believe this comes back to authenticity. Unless somebody is being violent or breaking the terms of service, you have to deal with good feedback as well as negative feedback. So one of the ways to push negative feedback down, well, first and foremost, deal directly with negative feedback. If you have the opportunity to respond in a positive, professional manner. If there's anything that you can do to improve the situation or to make it up to your dissatisfied client, do so. Now, on the other side, sometimes it's just negativity. If it's that kind of stuff, I can say you can ignore it because the sophisticated user will read that kind of comment and make their own judgment about the character of the poster. The only other way to bury bad reviews is to get new reviews. So reach out, make sure that your customers are aware that they can leave reviews, ask them to leave reviews. It's against the rules to offer incentives, so don't do that, and definitely don't create fake reviews with fake profiles. That will get you penalized. And then the last thing I would suggest is just create more great content. If you have more profiles and more content and more blog posts and more good things going on, those kinds of real-time positive activities that are engaged to your community will start to push the negative stuff that's less relevant down the page.
Okay, I listened to each of you earlier, and Gary, you were saying that we should be checking our LinkedIn profile at least once a week, and then at another point you said you should be talking about daily checking on our social media. Finding the time can be very, very challenging. Have you any tips on how to stay relevant without losing too much time, because you can get sucked in as well and lose a lot of time?
You can, definitely. One thing I like to do is to start in the morning and see what's new. This is less on LinkedIn and more on Facebook and Twitter for me. But if I set aside, when I'm getting into my day, 15 minutes to check my different platforms and see what's happening, do some engagement. For LinkedIn, it's pretty straightforward. Your profile hasn't really changed overnight, but you can see what your followers and connections are posting on your feed, and so doing some liking and some commenting, taking a few minutes to engage with people is well worth your time, I think. So it doesn't have to be a long time. Maybe on your lunch break you spend a little bit of time checking in, and then maybe again at the end of the day. Or a lot of people will do it at home in the evening after everyone's in bed and you're relaxing. And engaging that way. So there are little pockets of time that you can find, but it doesn't have to be an hour set aside every single day to do this at all. So, but realize and maybe put a reminder in your calendar midweek or something like that, where if you haven't put a little bit of time in, you get that reminder to do it that week.
And I'll just add 15 minutes a day. If your personal brand is something that you need to improve, then make it a habit of 15 minutes a day, and until it becomes second nature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting, because we all spend time maintaining our cars and our home and even our personal image, but you're telling us that it's important to also spend time maintaining your online profile. I think we've learned a lot today, in particular about why social media presence is important for your professional life, creating new contacts, new partnerships, and finding new opportunities as well. How to leverage it across your different social media channels is very, very important. And we've found some very good tips there, what to do with colleagues and bosses and so forth. And also how to demonstrate. I think that was a very useful tip I got out of it, was how to demonstrate, not just to talk about what you're good at, but also to demonstrate it. And Trevor talked about the media feature on LinkedIn. It's a very underused tool, and it's a great way of demonstrating, something that you've done, maybe something you've spoken at, a conference that was recorded, or you have your own videos or whatever. I'm going to leave it there today. As I said before, this is the first of a two-part social media webinar, and the next day we would like to focus on social media from the organizational point of view. A very, very heartfelt thank you to both Trevor and Kerry. Thank you very much for joining us. I think our audience got a lot out of that.
Thank you very much.